Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our continued Administrator Response Support Series for the 2021-22 school year. My name is Rosie O'Brien Boytek, and I'm the Assistant Executive Director of the Connecticut Association of Schools. Today's session is continuing the conversation about implementing rigorous, high-quality, play-based learning experiences in the early grades. We're very excited to welcome back Joe Macrino, principal of Oswegatchie Elementary School, along with one of the kindergarten teachers and a coach as our special guest this morning. Once again, we at CAS are very excited to collaborate with the Office of Early Childhood, the Connecticut State Department of Education, and the Regional Education Service Center's RESC Alliance to support the needs of all of Connecticut's youngest learners, including children with special needs and other vulnerable populations. During each of our monthly sessions this year, you will have an opportunity to reflect upon your current practices around specific topics, as well as to dive deeper into each topic and discover effective strategies and techniques based on research and best practices. This morning, we will dive deeper into the change process that is occurring at Oswegatchie Elementary School as they make the transition to more purposeful play connected with the academic standards and expectations of kindergarten. You will also have the opportunity to meet with colleagues across the state and some of our early childhood specialists from the RESC Alliance to exchange ideas and strategies on building and implementing a meaningful early childhood curriculum. There's so much to think about as we design and implement teaching and learning during the 2021-22 school year, especially for our youngest students across the state. So once again, we're glad that you're joining us today. Just a couple of quick reminders. Everyone has been muted to begin with, but once you get into the breakout rooms, please unmute yourself to talk with each other. If possible, please turn your video on, as it's nice to be able to see everyone, especially when we're working in small groups. When we're working as a whole group, please ask questions in the chat or raise your hand with a button at the bottom of the screen to be recognized. Also, please use the chat feature to ask questions, share ideas, and let us know if you have experienced technical problems during the Zoom meeting, as we will be monitoring the chat. However, when you are in the breakout rooms, the chat feature is only seen by the people in your breakout rooms. So if you have questions or need help when you're in the breakout room, please use the help button and one of the hosts will respond. This webinar is being recorded, but only during the whole group activities. We're unable to record the small group conversations during the breakout room portion of the webinar. However, the rest of the webinar will be recorded and will be posted for future viewing on the CAS, OEC, CSDE, and RESC websites. So please be sure to share the link to this webinar with your colleagues once it's posted. And please invite your administrative colleagues to join us for future sessions. These sessions will be held on the first Thursday of every month from 9 to 10 a.m. Again, I would like to welcome and thank all of you for joining us today. It's now my pleasure to introduce our facilitator and get us started for this continued early childhood administrative response session. Please join me in welcoming Jillian Mocha. Jillian is an early childhood and special education teacher and learning specialist at the Cooperative Education Service, CES. And now here's Jillian.
Thank you, Rosie. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I just want to make sure that we review our agenda. And as we welcome you all back to this very important discussion, as Gay Runlin and Thomas Rendon describe in their book, Saving Play, play is a universal phenomenon. Everyone, everywhere, all cultures, all ages, and I would like to add all abilities, plays. Research studies and position statements link high-level play to gains in cognitive learning and academic achievement, to physical health and social-emotional development, and to the development of approaches to learning. Early childhood classrooms have the unique opportunity to inspire young children to feel empowered, competent, and capable through inquiry, problem-solving, exploration, and discovery, establishing a foundational joy in learning, inspiring them to see the value in their contributions and to continue to pursue their interests and their passions. Play-based learning experiences provide access for all children to create, evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, remember, and practice higher order thinking skills. So it begs the question, why would we not consider play a vehicle for learning beyond the preschool classroom? During our last session, Principal Joe Macrino outlined 6 key steps to implementing a play-based learning model in his kindergarten classrooms. identifying the need for a foundation in research and developmentally appropriate practice, which has also been a goal of the work during these responsive support sessions. Today, we're excited to continue this conversation and learn more from Principal Joe Macrino and his incredible team at Oswegatchie Elementary School in Waterford, Connecticut. We're excited to hear more from their perspectives about putting these steps into action. And in an effort to refresh our memories, for anyone who missed the last session, I'm going to share a brief video of what purposeful play and executive function looks like in the classrooms of Oswegatchie Elementary School before we introduce the members of their amazing team. So let's take a look at this first.
Making food
Did you drive? Oh my gosh, look at
we are just cooking stuff
Are we ready?
and making dinner.
Okay, so we know research has told us that children learn best through play. So we have been working closely with coaches and EASTCONN to incorporate that play into our classrooms. Previously, I was a preschool teacher. We had plenty of time for play through our curriculum in that classroom. So transitioning to kindergarten, I wanted to make sure that these kiddos were able to have that same experience in our classroom. So we've been working closely with our coaches to develop play-based scenarios that incorporate our standards into practice so that we can defend why it's important, again, for our kiddos to be playing.
Today I am meeting with Melanie and we are talking about beginning the process of play planning. My students have been engaging in the purposeful play and I have the management down, but now we're going to kind of add the next layer and start teaching the students how to write about, plan what they're going to play, and then execute those plans.
And play planning is an integral part of our executive function work because it allows children to plan out what they're going to do what they said they were going to do, and then revisit that after play is done so that children are using their working memory and they're using their self-regulation skills to make sure that they are implementing what they said they were going to do.
What are you doing?
Ready to work.
Ready to work. What are you working on?
Build a house.
You're gonna build a house.
So tomorrow we will be meeting with the coaches. We are going to look ahead at our poetry unit and we are going to try to come up with some play-based activities that they can do. We're going to embed the poetry standards that we need to cover into those scenarios. Again, that will give kind of a guiding tool for us so that we can make sure we cover the standards, but we can also utilize the children's interest.
Ready? Let's do our T like we did yesterday. Ready? Line down, line across. Good, now get your sun.
Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and introduce one of our panelists today, Principal Joe Macrino of Oswegatchie Elementary School, excuse me. Take it away, Joe.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time, Jillian. Thank you for the introduction, and Rosie for having my team and I on today. We're excited to share with you the next level of work from what I shared last time. So now you're going to hear from the people that are actually doing the hard work, the stars of that past video. Melanie Smith-Cervera and Rebecca Boyce. And they're going to lead you through the frameworks of implementation. I kind of went from the administrative lens last time, talking about, how we as an individual school are starting to get our feet on the ground and implement more purposeful play embedded into our classrooms, and not only in pre-K, but in kindergarten, and hopefully next year moving into grade 1. Just as I said last time, I am no expert, but I am devoted to making this the norm for our school and our district, and I welcome questions at any time. One of the first questions we got after the last presentation was just to define roles, and I'm just speaking about roles at Oswegatchie School in terms of getting this work done and how to advocate. So my role as an administrator when it comes to early childhood learning, particularly the implementation of purposeful play and strategies that support executive function, are really just to have background. I'm never the smartest person in the room, and I always look to my colleagues to get that smartness. But basically, I just continue to collect articles and research and books that I hear from my colleagues about, so I can further this work and I can defend this work. And then it's also my duty to ensure that there are things in place, processes in place to ensure that everything that we do is connected to standards, that we have some foundation to look at, and then secure the PD, the professional development time and funding related to it, to champion this work and making it as a priority for our school and for our elementary district. The teacher's job is really to experiment and implement, collect data, and advocate for more programming. We meet regularly to see what boxes need to be checked, what new things we need to consider, and of course, what needs to be ordered. And then we're using our coach, our executive function coach, our purposeful play coach, Melanie. Her role is really to create a roadmap, figure out pacing, figure out where every individual teacher is on this journey, and support them to connect the dots and problem solve. And now it's my privilege to introduce one of the best that we have, Rebecca Boyce. She is currently serving as a kindergarten teacher and is part of the coaching sessions in purposeful play and executive function. And she has a lot to share with you. And if you do have questions, just put them in the chat and I'll try to moderate that as Rebecca and Melanie present. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I, again, feel like Joe, I don't feel like I'm an expert on this, so I'm honored that I was asked to come and speak to you about what we're doing in the classroom. Again, like Joe said, I have been a kindergarten teacher for many years, but I was also in preschool the last 2 years. So I come to kindergarten, back to kindergarten with a very different lens than I had before Melanie's coaching and having the opportunity to have my kiddos be able to play on a more regular basis. So again, this is my 3rd year working with Melanie. So everything I present today and talk to you about today has definitely been a work in progress. And I'm not an expert and I am learning as I go, and Melanie's helping me do that. So kudos to her as well. I think one of the biggest things that I said to Joe when I decided to transition to kindergarten was that I was absolutely not going to let the importance of play go, and that was going to be my driving force in the classroom. And so I hope that I'm doing that, and I hope that I can address some of your questions around that as I present today. So I'm going to share my screen, I think. Okay, so one of our biggest things that Melanie and I have been working with this year in kindergarten is taking students' interests and building scenarios of play around those interests. At the beginning of the year, we just kind of had some open centers open for them, you know, blocks, art, toys and games, discovery table, a writing table. And my role at that point was to kind of just sit back and observe and listen to what the kiddos were doing and talking about, so that I could kind of see what their interests were and start to build a study around their interests. that took many weeks. And it took Melanie coming in and kind of sitting side by side with me and saying, guess what? In each area of your classroom, they're building something. They're moving things, they're adding to something. They might be building paper airplanes over at the art table, you know, at the toys and games table. They were taking the blocks we had there and building towers with them. So she said, you know, I think there might be some sort of an interest in that. And then what kind of solidified all of that was when we were outside walking on our nature trail and the kiddos saw an outdoor structure. Somebody had taken a bunch of sticks and had made this shelter. And so that kind of was our guiding, that was kind of my light bulb that went off that said, I think that these kiddos are interested in learning about building and the roles of a builder and an architect and a designer, and how why we create shelters, what we create shelters out of. So that's kind of where this study has, or this scenario of play has started. So I'm going to go through my slides here and show you some of things in action. So we started by just making some, you know, what do we already know about buildings? What kinds of things, background knowledge do the kiddos have? So we made some charts where we talked about the different tools that are used to make buildings, the materials, the types of buildings there were, and again, what workers would make these buildings. And even yesterday, the kiddos were still talking about how we don't have a curved block in the block area to make a submarine. So let's build our own blocks now. And we could build blocks for everyone in the school that doesn't have blocks. So we're still even working through this scenario, and it's been going on, I mean, for a good 3 months, we've been talking about this. So again, we're just kind of still taking those kiddos' interest and kind of moving through our path of their interests. They decided that they wanted to make their own buildings with blocks. And so we've been collecting cardboard and different recycled materials. They all signed up for the different types of buildings that they came up with that they wanted to make. And again, we're not finished. We have a lot of unfinished projects in the hallway, but it's very, really cool to see their interests and their knowledge of these buildings come together in their own projects. This is a document that I made. This is just our standards, and it's kind of written in much easier form. And what I do with this is that once we hear from the kiddos and we figure out what their interests are, then as I sit and plan, I need to be assured that I'm touching on those standards. Again, in this building unit, there has been a lot of math and science standards that we have used. And as you'll see in some more slides that I have, having them design these buildings, I'm purposeful about making them make sure that they're writing, labeling, so that again, I can go back to my standards and I can highlight and say, okay, I know that I've checked this off of my list. I know that the kiddos were eventually going to have to assess what their knowledge is. So again, using these standards and highlighting to make sure that I've checked them off, I can go back and utilize that as a part of their assessment too. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. When we start building a scenario, we really like to give them a lot of background knowledge. Some people might not ever have seen a construction site before. So Melanie has worked with me finding lots of great videos to build that background knowledge. So before we even start talking and building those anchor charts, I'm just showing these videos, you know, maybe while they're having a snack time, I have a video up for them. And again, I'm listening and hearing what questions they might have and jotting those down so that I can go back to those with them. Lots of books. We're fortunate enough that in our preschool, one of their units of study from the creative curriculum is a building study. So we've got lots of books and resources that we've been able to utilize through them as well. But again, just a ton of background building so that they know what the rules are. Once we have the rules in place, I will put out investigative materials on the tables for them during their purposeful play time. And again, getting them to practice the skills of designing. You can see here, we have a student who is drawing the Capitol. I had little pictures of different monuments out on the tables. I had blocks, protractors, rulers, graphing paper, so that, again, they could just become hands-on in their exploration of the topic. I was fortunate enough once to be in architectural school, so I had a lot of tracing paper and triangles and all of the things that again, utilizing your parents and asking for this kind of material is also important, and we do that. I happen to have some things in my basement that I was happy to pull out and let them use. Again, I know that Jillian spoke about reaching all children's levels. The kiddo on the end in his orange mask is a child that has a one-to-one in our classroom. And again, everybody can access the curriculum here with these explorations. And that's what I just love about this work so much, is that it's just the kiddos' interest, and it's them they're the driving force, and I'm just there to kind of guide and push and ask questions to further their knowledge. Again, once we talk about roles, again, many weeks of watching videos. If you have the ability to have people come into your classroom and speak, I know that's been a little crazy with COVID and we haven't been able to visit sites, but when and if we can, again, having them understand what is the role of an architect, what does that architect do? Same thing with builders. Again, showing just videos so that they can understand what an architect does, what their job is, what their role is. And again, we did builders, we did plumbers, we did engineers. Once we have kind of really figured out what they do and the kiddos have agreed upon the roles in our classroom, then those pictures of architects or builders will go into these little badges that we have. And again, Melanie, you can talk about this. This is a lot of information, and I don't want to overwhelm people, but basically what happens is that we then give them a role. So if they pick the purple clip off the wheel, they, as you can see, there's a picture of some architects there. They are going to go to dramatic play and they are going to be an architect that day. That is their role, that is their job. If they're going to take a blue clip, they're going to be in the block area and they're going to be the builder. The architect is going to draw something and they're going to take it over to the builders, and then the builders are going to build that. And again, in a perfect world, that happens seamlessly and flawlessly. Yesterday, that did not happen seamlessly and flawlessly, as Melanie was there to witness. The builders said they don't want to make that submarine that those kiddos are building. So we sat afterwards, after our playtime together, and we talked every day about what did you do? What was your plan? Did you follow through with your plan? Did something get in the way of you following through with your plan? And there was an issue yesterday and they addressed it. And so again, the kiddos today, I'm not in the classroom today, but today we are going to be making boxes. We are going to be making boxes for that submarine that didn't get built yesterday. So again, I think that problem solving, connecting all of this stuff to real life so that these kiddos, are able to share, to talk about their concerns, to say, I wasn't heard and this is important to me. And I want, all of these great social emotional skills are happening within this playtime.
Rebecca, can I jump in for 1 second on that one?
Yep. Do you want me to go back?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Yep.
So Rebecca's clips that she was talking about is one of the pieces that really support executive function for young children during this time. So our centers are color coded, and when children choose the clip, they know that the clip represents the area they've chosen, or the role in this case. That one-to-one correspondence of looking at the color I chose and the place that I'm going supports that executive function skill of working memory. And then children use play planning also, which we'll talk about in a minute, in the same color of the clip that they chose. So again, that's a piece of executive function that we are working to support children during this time. That center management piece, the roles, the badges that are color coded, and then it correlates with the play plans and the areas that they're going. So children who don't necessarily have the abilities to maybe read what their plan was, they know that their plan had to do with something in blocks because it's a blue marker that's drawing that plan. So that all ties in together to support those executive function pieces.
Yeah, that's a lot of background that goes into building this too. Again, that's why I just want to stress that at year 3, you know, this is a ginormous leap from year 1, where they were just taking that color-coded clip and going to the art area or going to the block area. Now, you know, we've got much more mature kiddos with their ability to have an end goal in mind, and being able to work together. So that's how we've, you know, grown from 2 years ago. And I have some of these kiddos that were in preschool with me now in my K classroom. So it is fun to see that they understand the clips, they understand the system. And so that kind of management piece is really easy at the beginning of the year, because we've got kiddos now that have done this for a few years with our preschool program. So again, like Melanie said, the very first part of our day before we go off and make any choices about where we're going to be or the roles we're going to be doing is our plan. We make a plan. So the kiddos choose a clip. You can see our wheel there. It's color coded. I have blocks, art area, dramatic play. I have a toys and games table and a writing table. And during our scenario right now, the dramatic play area and the block area and the art area are the 1 rules that are on the clips. So if you decide that you're going to blocks, you're the builder, you're the architect if you're at dramatic play, and at the art table, we're the designers. We're designing our own buildings out of cardboard right now. So again, once they choose the clip, they then draw their picture. Again, I model my own play plan in front of them before they do this. You know, I might choose something that that I have new out in the classroom. I might write about something that we're going to do later in the day, like take a nature walk. So basically just giving them the idea that we're making a plan, we're writing that plan down, and we're going to communicate it to others. So for example, this friend Ryder, he was going to the block area. The block area is, I think that's blue marker, yeah. The block area, he was going to be working on building, and his play plan says, I will be an architect. This other friend Willard, he was going to the art area, and his play plan is, I will finish my skyscraper. So again, lots of literacy in this first part. This is, you know, they have to count how many words they're going to have in their sentence. They have to draw the lines for that. They have to make sure they have an ending mark. We have written I and will thousands of times this year, so that's an expectation that that will be a capital I and that they will spell will correctly. And again, this is a big part of our literacy component too, that I can check off on that list of standards just as they're beginning their day with me. Once they make their plan, then they go off and do their play. And as you can see here, they're working. We have friends building that submarine I was talking about. We have a little fake iPad there that they're using as their computer. We've got T-squares and pretend drafting boards, just trying to elicit a real type of office there. We had taken out all of the dramatic play food, as that was becoming kind of silly with our office. But you know, some friends said, well, when you go to an office, you have to pack a lunch. So we're talking and working on how we're going to get maybe some lunch bags in there so that we can pack our lunches to go to the office. So these are the builders in the block area. I don't know if you can see, I think I'm just covering it, but I am making them design their structure before they build. Again, this was kind of happening before we had the architect's office open. And so I was kind of holding them accountable to make a plan, draw it, and then do it. Now that the architect office is open, the architects are bringing the plans over to the builders, and the builders are building them. This is in our area. The kiddos are designing their own buildings. We have lots of different pictures of types of buildings, skyscrapers. We have some dog houses being built. We have some actual houses. We have a submarine. We have, what else do we have? Lots of skyscrapers. We have a movie theater that someone is building. So again, you can see that little friend drawing his design. I'm making him label. They just want to get right in. They want to go right in that closet and get all those boxes out and start gluing and taping and painting. But I am trying to hold them accountable too, just again, so that I can have some of that documentation of their learning down. Again, this is just some more pictures of our dramatic play. I have, we have a tube that our drawings go in, that we make sure we take them to the builders in the tube because we don't want that rain to ruin the designs. And so we're still in the very big meat of this. We're not really finished with it. I don't know how many more weeks we have left of it, but they're still very excited. They're still going through the roles pretty regularly, and not, I think once you see some distracted behaviors, then okay, maybe we need another scenario to jump into. But I think one of the ways I know, and lots of questions have come up about how we assess the kiddos, and a lot of the things that I'm doing to assess them, we're using Seesaw as a platform to record their work, take pictures so that we have both anecdotal records as well as videos. Again, a lot of the charts of what did we know, what did we learn. So these are just some of the things that we have talked about. That architects create sketches, they use cool tools like T-squares. They love rolling out that paper and cutting it, just all of the little things that we think is so silly. That is their driving force there. The fact that I'm allowing them to use these tools like T-squares, or even to have a hammer in the block area, the tape measure that they wound around the entire classroom to see how long the classroom was. All of these real hands-on materials, they appreciate. And my thing as a teacher is, if you're using it respectfully and responsibly, then I'm happy that it can be here. And we've had a few times that we've had to take a few tools away and take a break from them for a day. But again, I think that they are so responsible because this is coming from them. This is their interest. They want to be doing this. And so they are going to use the things safely because they don't want them to go away. They love doing this. I think that might be my last slide. So let me stop share. And Melanie, I don't know if you want to jump in and say anything, or if we want to do questions next. That's a lot of information. Whether or not it was even organized, good for you, I'm not even sure. But I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Melanie, could you describe the coaching process a little bit? Because some people might not be familiar with that partnership.
Sure. I think it was funny when we were talking about sort of what my role is, I was saying, well, I'll wave the executive function flag, right? So one of my big pieces is that we keep in mind that the biggest piece we are working on is helping to support children's executive function skills, which include their working memory, their ability to be flexible with cognitive flexibility, and their self-regulation of actions and their attention, right? So purposeful play is one of those vehicles that really help children practice those executive function skills, because when we think about play and children engaged in cooperation with others, that they have to do a lot of problem solving, right? Which takes a lot of cognitive flexibility, that they have to listen to others' ideas and perspectives and take those into account. They have to regulate their behavior and be able to cooperate and play with others. So that's a huge piece that children are practicing those executive function skills as they're playing, as well as all the things Rebecca mentioned about having fun and engaging in a variety of activities that support multiple standards across the board. I think this year, Rebecca mentioned 3 years, we're 3 years into this with a little disruption of COVID, but we got right back on the horse as soon as we could. This year, we are really bringing in the literacy and math coaches who have proven to be an integral part of this work so that they can help us support those standards, seeing where we can tie in writer, reader workshop pieces to the play. Can we use that time to read books that give children the background knowledge that they need? Can we use that time to do some writing around what children need to know to be able to carry out the roles in their play? We're working on those math standards like Rebecca just mentioned, especially with that architect and builders roles. Children are measuring, they're counting, they are using their math skills regularly and daily through play. So taking those pieces together, and really it does take a village. It takes Joe at the administrator level, it takes Rebecca at the teaching level, it takes me at the coaching level, and it takes our literacy and math coaches at their level to all come together and figure out how we can make this successful and sort of meet everybody's needs and get all those buckets filled so that everyone feels like they are included in the work. I think the key piece for what Rebecca mentioned is that reflection. So she mentioned yesterday that, the builders weren't really interested in drawing what the architects had drawn. So we sort of sat down afterwards and said, well, what else can we do to support this? What can we do to help children maybe who don't want to be building what the architecture drew, to get them to realize that sometimes we might just have to draw something and then we can go on and draw and do something else and build something else. So we talked about having a way to maybe put the drawings over where the builders are and hang them up, and they have to sort of check off as they get through their architect's drawings. And that was reflection that Rebecca and I sit down quite often and say, hey, this worked really well. That's awesome. Let's celebrate. And then let's think about what didn't work so great and how can we change that. So it's a big piece of the work that we do. My role as a coach, I think, is really to provide the resources that they need. When Rebecca said, I really want to do something around building, I tried to get her as many resources that I could find online for those background knowledge videos. We sometimes will research some books that we can use, pictures for inspiration that we can Google and find images for. And then I do a lot of sort of just support. How can I support you? What can I do for you? Can I jump in when children are playing? Do you want to meet afterwards to discuss, or a combination of those things? And in addition, we do training. So our model is to do training and then sprinkle in coaching for a couple months, then do another training and sprinkle in more coaching, so that people are getting a staggered approach of learning some new things in training and getting the support they need to implement them in the classroom. And like Joe mentioned in the beginning, many teachers are at many different stages of this and many different levels. So it is also my job to support them where they are, address any questions or concerns, and then take them to that next space where they're ready to go. So Joe has a teacher who isn't really fully trained, but is really engaged in the work. So her and I meet when I'm there, and I give her just a little dabble of something to try, and she goes and runs with it and tries it in her classroom. And I sort of support her in a little bit of a different way than I would others. I do think we have to think about this as a multi-tiered, multi-year approach. It's not something that you bring in for, year one, and then you let the site go and the program go on their own. Like Rebecca said, she's now in year 3 of this and is really starting to get really deep in it. It takes a little time and effort to get there. And I think that's a big piece of the work that we've been doing, is that Joe has been keeping it on the forefront, keeping it going in Waterford for us to maintain the momentum that we started in year 1. And I do see some people on the call that have done this work in the past. So I just saw John Fortunato in the chat. And I think Kim Bartle is with him in his computer, and they do the work, have done the work in Wyndham and are still doing it in pre-K. So it's nice to see some folks on the call that are also involved in the work in other districts.
And I think intentionality and momentum are the 2 key words in all this work, Melanie, for teacher, coach, and administrator.
Yep.
I also saw in the chat just sharing a kindergarten schedule, and we absolutely can get that to you. I think one of the things I want to say is that the purposeful play portion of my day happens first thing in the morning for 45 minutes, and then we go about the rest of our day. So I am still held accountable for doing the reading and writing portion of my day. We do have a math curriculum that we're following. I think that one of the biggest things that I feel like we defend here at Oswegatchie is that they are getting a lot of reading, writing, and math, science, social studies during that playtime. It would be my dream to have us doing this all day long and having this guide their learning. We're definitely not there yet. So my 45 minutes is sacred for me. But we do have a lot of people that say, well, I don't have time for my foundations lessons, or I don't have time for science. So again, I think that's where the coaches in our district are coming in to kind of help us and say, if you don't sit down and do a guided writing lesson every day, that's okay, Rebecca, because look at how much writing they're doing every single morning with those play plans. And so to hear from the coaches that that's okay, and that I can meet with writing groups 3 days a week, and I'm still going to be okay with that. That's nice to hear and have that support too. So I think that that's a huge, important aspect of this type of learning, especially as we get into these older grades.
And
I
we
think
are
we're-
doing, oh, sorry, Joe.
Go ahead, Melanie.
I was gonna say, we are doing some planning on a PD day coming up in March, where we are working on taking one of the science units that is kindergarten, one of the kindergarten units, and trying to create a general broad scenario around animals so that each teacher can have that as their guide and then take it into their classroom and sort of meet the needs of the interests of the children. So one of the teachers was like, my kids are really interested in aquatic animals. So she might do something like an aquarium. Another teacher might say, my kids are actually more interested in domestic animals. So they might do something around pets and veterinarian and groomers and things like that. So we're trying to be giving teachers the tools they need, but also still allowing, like Rebecca said, that interest that the children have and meeting the science unit that they're going to be working on in the spring. So again, I think taking into consideration the pieces we know the teachers already have to do, and then how can we get purposeful play to support that so it doesn't feel like an additional thing I have to do, and I and then I get worried about it and stressed that I can't fit it in. So we really are trying to support teachers in all aspects.
We'd like to get into some breakout rooms in a minute. And before we do that, we're just going to show a quick video, a new video, just a quick slideshow of play planning in action in Rebecca's classroom. But I want to go back to Melanie's point about professional development, just administrators to administrators. If you can get this work on PD calendars, it makes a big impact. Not only are teachers getting the support they need and the time they need and resources to implement this, but when this is posted on a document, an agenda for the day that goes to the Board of Education, that goes to central office, that's just one more level of commitment that this is not a passing fad that looks cute because a bunch of kids have, construction helmets on. This is hard work that you need to dedicate an exceptional amount of time and resources and background research on to get it done. So that's just my soapbox right there. Believing in it is one thing. The next step is getting it formalized on calendars in the classroom and on PD days. So Jillian, if you could, and then Mr. Fortunato will answer your question in a breakout room as well. That won't be forgotten. That's a big point right there about children with special needs.
What word are you looking for, Campbell? Writing table? Wah, wah, wah.
I don't know what I have to do. I don't know what Twitter is.
And that's I want to remind everybody that's a kindergarten classroom. That's not a preschool classroom. So I always love seeing that amount of engagement. And like I said in the previous one, we're looking at this kind of work to pull it up into the other grades. We have some questions about differentiation strategies to support all the needs and recommendations for PD. And I think those are great questions that can be answered in breakout rooms. So Jillian or Rosie, would you like to facilitate that?
Sure. Given that we have a limited time, I don't know, does it make sense that we just
Sure.
maybe answer the questions just for the benefit of everyone participating?
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
just
that
gonna
might-
grab a book real quick. I wanted to show just some things we start off with in terms of if you want just quick PD from now until the end of the year. Just I would recommend a book club around powerful interactions. That was a great book. At wherever you are in this journey, you can just jump into this, and it
So
doesn't.
who's the author? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Amy Laura Dombro, Judy Jablon, and Charlotte Stetson. I know our team had done some prior work with Judy Jablon too, and this is where this one came up. So Powerful Interactions, that's a NIAC publication. And then if I could find it, yeah, this is what I brought up last time too. This is teacher and administrator friendly, the Fidelity Tool, teacher checklist, preschool edition. I think it's totally transferable into the kindergarten classroom as well through teaching strategies and creative curriculum. I've used this to just set up the classroom as the other teacher. It's checklists and I use this in a non-evaluative way. We do classroom walkthroughs. We see where we're at and what we want to work towards next time we walk through as a team. So that's definitely going to be high on the list of work for next year. So those are just my 2 plugs for immediate PD that your staff can walk away from at the end of a PLC with something in their pocket.
And I
Can
think
I-
the book, Jillian mentioned Saving Play, right? Jillian, was that the book that you read an excerpt from the beginning? That's an amazing book because it's all about kindergarten and addressing standards through play. So I would recommend that book as well that Jillian had mentioned.
That resource is really great because it does identify the roles again for administrators and for teachers. So I appreciate that aspect of it as well.
And the executive function work that we do is based on the book Tools of the Mind by Elena Bedrova. So that is something else that we often will recommend. The first part is really heavy on research. So if that's your thing, that's awesome. And then the second part is really heavily based on the executive function strategies that we teach through our PD and purposeful play. They call it mature play. But it's the same concept of getting the roles and the center management system up and running. So that's basically where this work stemmed from. EASTCONN, before my time even, it was John Fortunato's time, so he could speak to it. They had Elena Bedrova come in and do a full Tools of the Mind training for our staff here at EASTCONN, and then we picked the ball up and went from there with EA Aschenbrenner, and she started this ball going, and it is still going full steam ahead all these years later. So that's another amazing tool as well.
Thank you. Hey, Rebecca, could you address John's question about children with special needs and strategies to support all students and all the different needs?
Absolutely. I didn't see his full question, but I certainly can speak to that. I definitely have a classroom of a lot of diverse learners. Again, I think that's why taking the kiddos' interests is super important in this. A couple of the kiddos that I have in my classroom are nonverbal. And so we're using tools with the speech pathologist during that time, conversation starters, giving them different vocabulary words to be using, asking. One of my kiddos' big things, especially in the building area, is that they want to have a certain type of block all the time. And so having the kiddos working together, offering something else, my turn, your turn, those kinds of things for those particular kiddos. But again, a lot of like language things going on with our speech pathologist around that. I think that having invitations and provocations on the table that allow anyone to access them is huge, a huge portion of this. Again, at our writing table, we've got lots of word wall words that they can use posted right there on the table in a pocket chart. We have stencils for those kids who are working on forming letters. We have, Play-Doh out for kiddos who are, needing some more fine motor work before they're able to write letters. So again, I think that in the classroom with the materials and having them be able to access multiple things at each levels. In the video you saw, The first video you saw, little boy working on a marble run. Again, he's one of my nonverbals. And again, I would just say to him, block up, and he would put the block up and able to make a ramp to let that roll. So again, I think that some of us teachers do this just naturally, and it's hard to explain. But I think, again, coming down, just having the materials, using the resources of the people in your building that are already working with these kiddos and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. You know, are there other ways I can support? For example, I have another little boy with very weak fine motor skills. So the clips that we put around the wheel, it's his job every afternoon to put those on the wheel. And that's one of his, you know, the gripping things he's working on. And again, I didn't know any of that if I hadn't reached out to the OT. It was her idea. So I think we have to be able to utilize the people in our building, because it shouldn't just be our responsibility. Everybody is working as a team here to make sure that these kiddos are getting everything that they need to be successful. I think just based on COVID and the need for some social emotional interactions, that this playtime for them is a huge piece of that. And without that, you know, I think that we would probably see more behaviors based on the kiddos I have in my classroom if they were not allowed to have some of this time that is just about them and their interests. And I think that that's my job, is to make sure that these kiddos are giving that opportunity. And, you know, I hope these videos make me want to cry, because I feel like when you're in the trenches every single day, you don't reflect on any of this. You're just like, okay, on to the next thing, or what do I have to do next? Or so seeing the kiddos like actually doing what we've talked about is really awesome and inspiring. It makes me want to go back in there. So I guess that's a good thing. I don't know if I answered the question, but again, I think you need to utilize the resources that you have in the building of the people that are working directly with these kiddos, and say, this is what we've got going on in our room. How can I help them? What tools do I need in here to be successful, so that they can be successful during this time?
Yeah, it can't be isolated to just the classroom teacher. We try to get as many people in, even just to watch, as possible. And it's catching on. So now we're having grade 1 knock, say, hey, during PLC, can we come down and peek in? And now I have a whole list of orders of furniture and pieces of play materials that these teachers want. Save your cardboard. It's good as gold in these environments. There was a question last time too about parent communication, and I think Rebecca hit the nail on the head. Seesaw. This is tough to explain to the layperson, and you know, this will be normal down the road, but for right now, it's still a little bit radical. And a program like Seesaw lets parents see not only the work in action, but the engagement and smiles on their kids. And if any of you are parents, you know how much more important it is to see those pictures and videos than to see a list of standards with a letter next to it on a report card. So if you just make this part of your messaging, even if it's just pictures in your newsletter of kids actively engaged in collaborative learning through inquiry-based play, you're going to hit a lot of home runs with possible naysayers. You can't say no to a smiling kid enjoying school.
Also, I've noticed on Seesaw that I get more reaction from parents when it's video clips. Again, you know, you have to obviously be careful about who you're videoing, but they can't get into the classrooms, you know, for multiple reasons right now. But so to allow them, you know, the little snippets into the classroom is huge. My weekly update that I send home every week, it starts with what we're doing during our playtime this week. We and again, you know, standards, what they're working on and learning on. I have parents reach out to me all the time. One little boy said, I'm going to be an architect when I grow up. And you know, she said, I didn't even know what he was talking about. Where did he get that from? She said, and then I got your weekly update and then I knew what you were talking about. So again, I start with it. And then of course I talk about what we're doing in foundations and our writing time and math, so that they, you know, I'm held accountable for all of that stuff, but I lead with it because they're kids, they're 5 and 6, and this is what we want them to be doing. And I really do feel supported by all the parents. Also, I think another thing is that when we start a new scenario, we always write a letter to the parents about what study we're doing, how they can support that at home, and as well as any materials or volunteers that could come in and talk to us. Last 2 years ago, we had a parent in a building. We were doing a, oh gosh, what was the study? Not a gymnastics study. Oh dear. It was a healthy living study. I can't remember exactly what we did. And we had a parent who was a yoga instructor. And so she came in and led our class in a few different yoga classes. So again, I think utilizing even your parents to bring in their expertise into the classroom is awesome as well.
Thank you, Joe and Rebecca and Melanie, for sharing your expertise with us today. I'm glad that we were able to sort of pivot so that we could all benefit from hearing how you work collaboratively together to accomplish this task. It's definitely given, I think, all of us a lot to sort of think about. And we will be sharing all of these resources that have been mentioned today with you in a follow-up email. So don't worry if you're, feverishly writing down book titles and authors. It's okay. We will send these resources out to you. And we had intended to give you some time to sort of reflect and plan some action steps for how you would like to implement this in your own program. So I will share just sort of a sample template of an action plan with you as part of those resources as well to kind of guide your planning and thinking in putting these steps into actions. But again, we really want to thank our panel today for sharing their wonderful evidence with us on how greatly this can impact access and participation and learning for all students in our care. So thank you so much for joining us today. Rosie, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just like to thank everyone for joining us today, and also our panelists, and let you know that I did put in the chat that also, as far as professional development, to mark your calendar for May 24th, we are planning to do I'm not sure if we're going to call it a conference or summit. We're just in the early planning stages, but EA Brenner will be a big part of that conversation, along with some experts from around the state and several panels, et cetera. So we're putting that into place. It will go from 8:30 to 12:30. And it will be virtual. So that will be something that I'm sure you'll want to attend, along with our sessions that we do every month from 9 to 10 o'clock on the first Thursday. So please join us for those. And just know that this will be posted on the CAS, OEC, and the RESC and websites, so that you can go back and use this with your teaching staff, as well as sharing it with your administrative colleagues and anyone else that you think might be interested. And we will post, when we post it on the CAS website, we also post all of the resources so people will have access to that. And if you missed last time's webinar when Joe was speaking the first time, you may want to go back and watch that one as well. And finally, Andrea Brennell said that she was sorry to leave early, but she wanted me to just mention how much from SDE they appreciate the panel today, from Joe, Rebecca, and Melanie, and all of you for attending. So again, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of the day.